Good afternoon. I'm Dale Doherty, and I'd like to welcome you to Maker Faire. As you know, it's our 10th annual Maker Faire. 10 years in this place, and I'm very proud that it has lasted this long. I hope it will continue to thrive as it is. Seeing so many different people here, so many makers, it's gotten a lot more complex over the years. A lot more is going on, and I think the impacts are even greater. You know, when I first had the idea for Maker Faire, it was somewhat grounded in the magazine, in Make magazine, that I was meeting really interesting people that I thought most people don't get to meet them. They don't get to talk to them. They don't get to ask them questions about what they're doing and don't get to see that. So I envisioned Maker Faire as an opportunity to create a conversation with a maker around the things that they make and to allow you to have that conversation back and forth and say, how'd you come up with that idea? Where'd you get those materials? How long you've been doing this, and how did you learn to do what you're doing now? And that remains for me the core of it. But you know, I met some other people as I began exploring. Sherry Huss, who now runs Maker Faire. Louise Glasgow is our producer, and they all had different backgrounds that help us shape this, because I think it was Sherry that really said, we don't want to be in a convention center. We want to be outdoors a bit, and we want to have kind of space that's a little bit unfinished. And that's how we found the San Mateo Event Center after looking at a bunch of fairgrounds. But we were kind of conscious of almost reinventing the fair. You know, the fairs go back in time to really agricultural eras, when people lived remotely and they came together and they shared what I often called pigs and pies. You know, they talked about what they do, how they do it, and they got to meet people that were doing similar things. And, you know, out of that, those fairs also grew commerce. People began to sell the things. They'd bring animals and sell them. But they also learned techniques, and they judged each other and how good they were at that. And so we were kind of conscious of reinventing the county fair and the art fair and the craft fair and the science fair, trying to bring some of that into something that's a little bit more relevant to the things that people do today. One of the real surprising things that has grown in addition to the 10 years of this fair is the growth of other fairs around the world. Last year we had 131 Maker Fairs around the world. Almost 750,000 people physically went to a Maker Faire. And those are about 84 in North America, and the rest split between Asia and Europe. But we think we might have north of 200 fairs this year and reach over 1 million people. And that partially because that core is having a conversation with makers, it can work with a couple makers, I mean, say 25 makers and a couple hundred people. But it's been a delight to see it also work at scale in places like Rome, where it is about our third largest fair in its second year. Last year had 70,000 people. Our organizers from Rome are sitting right there. And I always love the story there, because Ricardo invited me to give a talk at a seminar there, or a conference, and talked about making. And I felt like more than a couple people came up to me afterwards and said, you know, we're Italian, we're makers. This is who we are. This is us. You're talking about us. We don't have the word maker in Italian, but I believe they do now. And, you know, so it's really gratifying to see it spread. And I wanted to show you a few pictures from Maker Fairs, many that I visited last year. The first one, Maker Faire Oslo in Norway, was, you know, in the snow, first snowbound Maker Faire. And let's see, where am I? There we go. I didn't actually go to this one, but Oaxaca. And I'd really love to see more happening in Mexico and South America. We've had a couple in South America, but we're looking at getting Brazil and other countries going. But I think when I go to Maker Faire, it's not the space so much, it's the people and their expressions and the fact that they're happy, that they are doing something that makes them happy, and they like to talk about it. You know, I've always thought that makers are kind of, in another context, perhaps a little bit even socially awkward. But put them in front of the thing that they've made, and they become showmen. They love to talk all day long about what they do and how they did it. Shenzhen, I think I went last year in April to Shenzhen, and this year it's in June, and it's supposedly extremely going to be a very large fair. Both the individual Chinese are really kind of getting into the maker movement, and even the government and other things are doing things to support its development and growth. And of course, as you probably know, if you read Make Magazine, a lot of makers go to Shenzhen to get things made over there. But these are the kinds of images that come from a Maker Faire. This is some kind of wearable. I don't know what it is or what it does, but it's beautiful. Ornamentation. These drummers, I don't know exactly what they're doing or why, but that's the kind of carnival aspect of Maker Faire. Entertaining, fun, engaging, and it seems to work intergenerationally. That I don't want Maker Faire to be an event for kids. I want it to be an event for families. I want everybody to enjoy themselves, and I like a bit of edginess, a bit of sort of sense of risk-taking that's part of the fair, even here in the Bay Area. We've had a Maker Faire in Taiwan, and just love their graphic look there. And then probably the biggest thing we had last year was a Maker Faire at the White House. And the president met Lindsay Lawler, who's in Fiesta with his electric giraffe. Lindsay was here the very first year of Maker Faire. And as I joked with him, I said that, there's no friggin' way he ever gets to the White House except that he worked nights and weekends to create a silly 19-foot-tall giraffe that has electronics on it that people like to interact with. It was a side project. He's a system administrator by day. It's something he did because he loves to do it, and that's who makers are. This is the Italian Maker Faire, and they're very proud that Genuino and Arduino come from Italy, and it's very interesting. Paris, and the World Maker Faire in New York, and then Tokyo was probably the last fair I went to in November last year. And even this year I've been to Cairo, Egypt, where we had our first Maker Faire in an Arabic-speaking country, and it's wonderful to see that develop, and almost with the maker movement rises up with Arab Spring, and in many ways they're disappointed with the results of what might have been called a revolution, but it's actually caused them to channel that energy into things that they can do themselves, like make things or start a business. So it's really interesting to be there and see that. But I think something that I see and connect to a lot around making really isn't the technology per se. It's just the act of making and what it means to people. And the fact that we have a kind of freedom to make, creatively, to do things. And this is really what I want to share with kids, is this is a freedom to express yourself, just as music and art are forms of expression. So you can use physical things, you can use tools, you can develop skills, and develop technology. One of the things I think that if you think about what you see at Maker Faire, people are often using technology to interact with other people. It's just like playing a game. You have something that draws people together and to do things, and you initiate something and they do something in return, and you go on and on. I think when I think of the impacts of the maker movement, I would kind of say three things. One is innovation. We have lots of makers who are coming here with their first idea of a product, a prototype, and they're sharing it with people. Kickstarter told us last year that there were over 100 maker projects here in the Bay Area that had collectively raised over $23 million on Kickstarter. It's really impressive. You could think of this as like a grand prize, but the prize money comes from the community that support the projects and give them a start. But we also see the maker bots and the drones and other companies that have grown out of the maker movement and become much larger, as well as seeing larger companies like Intel and Microsoft begin to participate and bring their makers and maker products or maker tools to Maker Faire. As I kind of mentioned a minute ago, I believe the maker movement is going to transform our education system. Not just be plugged into the education system, not just have a curriculum for making in schools, but actually transform the way kids learn today. And it's almost as far away from standardized testing as you can get. Yeah, right? I don't understand why we don't pay attention to whether kids are engaged in school or not, because most of them are bored. I once wrote an article and say, why isn't school more like summer camp? Summer camp, they don't want you to be bored. They have all kinds of things going on, and they want you to do stuff, keep busy, have fun, meet other people. In school, you can sit in your seat and be bored, and if you're lucky, you doodle, and you become an artist. But, you know, we have to do something much better for our kids than what we're currently doing in most schools. I'm really happy to see a lot of schools here, a lot of kids here. We have a lot of young makers, and that's part of, you know, when you see other kids making things, doing things, you want to get involved. And I used to call it my Monday morning problem, is what happens when Maker Faire is over? And that kid who's come here and been inspired to make things says, where do I go to become one of these people? Where do I learn how to make things? And it often isn't school. If parents are available to help, they can be a great resource. But we have to provide more in our community, not just in certain parts of the community, really in all parts of the community, to help young people gain access to tools and expertise and develop the ability to create and make and build and shape. And I don't care whether they use their hands or what so much, whether physical things. It's really the mindset. We talk about a maker's mindset that they're really developing. And I think the third impact that we have here, and I think Maker Faire just celebrates this. It's a maker culture. It's the creation of culture. It's the creation of meaning. It's the acts and objects that tell us who we are, what we believe in, what we care about. And it's wonderful to see that maker culture also reflect local culture, like cities and countries. But I think it also connects globally into something much bigger than it had. I like to think that makers always existed, but many times they were by themselves. And what this maker movement is really connecting people together so they feel part of something larger than themselves. So, you know, we have kind of talked about Maker Faire. You know, I'm really proud of this kind of slogan of the greatest show and tell on earth as a fun way of saying what this is. You know, and the thing that, when I think about what is the magic of Maker Faire, it's that me and my team really just provide this venue and organize it. The magic comes from all of those people who create and bring things to Maker Faire. And it really is this co-creation of the event. I always try to tell people, particularly sometimes like people from the art world and museums, that I don't go out and ask anybody to make something for Maker Faire. I want them to bring what they're already making, what they're already passionate about doing. And my continued delight, yesterday I was just walking around and said, boy, I didn't even know that existed. I've never seen that before. Who are you and where do you come from? And this is probably in your garage when it's not here at Maker Faire. So it just is a tapestry of all kinds of people doing incredible things. And they're ordinary people. These aren't geniuses, but they are in their way. But I hope the people that come to Maker Faire are inspired to say, this is me, this is something I can do. I was really delighted. In Fiesta, there's a thing called light play, and it's just sort of light nodes moving around. And the young woman said, I came as a graphic artist a couple years ago. I just loved being here, and I knew I had to contribute. I knew I had to do something. I started to learn Arduino, and you know, now she describes herself as a hardware designer, and she developed that, which she says came into her in a dream, in her imagination. and then she made something that reflected that, and she brought it here to show and tell. I wanted to use this talk a little bit to say, in some ways, what's ahead of us? What's ahead for us? As I mentioned, we're going to have more Maker Fairs, but the reason we have more Maker Fairs is because, in a sense, we gave control over the community and says, we can't do all of them. We manage this one in New York, but lots of other people need to be involved in creating them as they are. So I'm kind of kicking off a campaign that we'll launch a little bit later at the National Maker Faire, but I wanted to share it with you, of Everybody Makes. And that has been my goal behind Maker Faire, is to make this particular event and these events very popular so that we get everybody, not just a few people, not just the people that say, I'm a maker. I want the people who stumble in not even knowing what that means, who walk away saying, I want to be a maker, I want to get involved. And it's important, we think, in terms of our culture, not between, one and the other, but to be very inclusive and bring people in. And I want to talk about a few programs that we'll be launching, but part of it, I want us to all think, not just of what we do to make ourselves happy, but how do we make the world better? How do we make it different than what it is? How do we imagine that? And how do we act on it? And I think the real power of the maker movement is that it's people at a grassroots level just taking the initiative to do something and to make the world better, really in small or large ways. So, I want to say to you all, we can make the world better. We can make it better for you, for your community, and for everybody if we're working together. I think some of the ways we already see this happening is makerspaces. We need makerspaces in schools and libraries. We have some of them in the community. We have tech shops and fab labs. We need more of them. We need them in the areas of the community where young kids, aren't not otherwise going to get that opportunity. We've written a playbook on how to create a makerspace. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people here you can learn from. And it's wonderfully propagating. In the same way that Maker Faire is, we're seeing lots of makerspaces growing up around the world. We launched makerspace.com as really almost like a network of makerspaces to be able to connect makers. When I visit makerspaces, what really upsets me? That I didn't know previously without going there what was going on in the space. I find really great projects like that would be at a Maker Faire, but sometimes people don't talk about what they do. And so we have to continue. I want students telling us about their student projects that they had an opportunity to present to the professors, but they didn't bother to tell the rest of the world about it. We have in June, this year, instead of the White House Maker Faire, we're doing the National Maker Faire on June 12th and 13th. And, we have this wonderful support, I think, from the White House, the Office of Science and Technology Policy. We have folks here from agencies like NASA, Department of Energy, that are really looking for those very things that I say. They're looking for innovation. They're looking to engage young people in solving important and interesting problems. And so we'll be gathering makers from as many states as we can and bring them together in June. We'll be launching Maker Camp, and if you don't know about it, we did it for, we've done it 3 years. This will be our 4th year, and again, just like Maker Faire, people step forward and organize affiliate physical maker camps. They say, our summer school is going to be a maker camp, or our community center is going to hold a maker camp. And we do some stuff to provide supplies and t-shirts and ideas for projects, but they do the amazing work. And if you check out makercamp.com, you'll see a wonderful video created by a young school. But I could not have produced a better video to say what the impact is on young people to see themselves as makers. We just are launching this week school maker fairs. And I'll say this, but don't quote me. I want to replace the science fair. It's boring. Right? It's a good thing that kids exhibit, but it doesn't have to be always constrained to follow the language of science. We want to combine creativity and science and anything that students are doing as projects. And so we have a new program for schools to easily just set up maker fairs. And I think this is the key thing is when we begin to see each other's ideas and creativity, it becomes infectious. and kids begin to learn from each other and begin to follow and create on their own. So we wrote another version of our playbook, a smaller one, more concise, aimed at schools. So we'll have makerspaces in schools, we'll have Maker Fairs. And this is almost intentionally a subversive act, to get making into schools the right way. I'm not trying to say, hey, we're getting that in schools by following the standards that you're asking. We're going to go around you, and we're going to come in the side door, and we're going to get parents involved, we're going to get kids involved, and we're going to change the schools that way. So together with each of us doing projects and sharing what we can do, we can make a big difference. And I think that's even what President Obama and other governments, we have people here from Taiwan and Hungary and Canada, and they're kind of waking up and see there's a lot of power in this maker movement if we can kind of unleash it, that potential in our audience. And so I think the key, though, is we have to see this as something that everybody is doing and that we can work together. People in this room can join with people outside of this room and make things happen. And I'd like us to almost, in a sense, a transition to finding a purpose for what you're doing in making, finding a goal, finding something in your community that you would like to change, something you would like to make better. And maybe you can't do it on your own, but as a small group, and perhaps even empowered by technology, you can accomplish this. So join us, join a movement, and help us make the change. We'll have another 10 years of Maker Faire ahead. Thank you very much.